Hillary Griffin. Good evening, everybody. I'm Hillary Griffin, president of the Madison Art Society, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for photographing your artwork, the lecture and workshop presented by Bob Thomas. Before we begin, just again, let me mention some of the technical points so that we have a smooth Zoom presentation tonight. In accordance with Zoom etiquette, everybody's microphone should be set to mute throughout the workshop. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the workshop and also throughout, as long as topics pertain to your question. So if that does happen, you can please chat your question and then I will periodically read some questions out so that Bob can address those. And that's down at the bottom. You'll see at the bottom of the toolbar down below, there'll be the chat and the raise your hand feature on the taskbar, the bottom of the screen. And that is, let's see. Yeah, as I said, as long as it pertains, we will break in and ask Bob some questions here and there. So let me tell you a little bit about the Madison Art Society. We are an art society of 250 members, consisting mainly of artists and art enthusiasts from Madison, from the Shoreline area, and from Connecticut and beyond. So please check our website, madisonartsocietyct.org, where you can find out more about us. And if you choose to, you can pay $25, become a member, if you have not already done so. And something might be fun here to mark on your calendars is in August, September, we have our 46th annual juried show, which will be held at the beautiful renovated Scranton Library. And there have not been really many events yet there at all. There was one event last weekend, but nothing else has been scheduled due to the pandemic. So we very much look forward to getting back to our home base and showing our work in the library there. They have two beautiful rooms that are community rooms, but they will act as our galleries for our show. So we're very excited about that. And we plan to offer many enticing and generous awards for paintings. So for artists that want to get involved, it would be worth your while to do so. So that is what we've got. And let's see, again, just thank yous out there to, of course, Bob for coming, Robert Thomas for speaking to us tonight and sharing his expertise on this topic. Also, thank you to Marianne for doing such a fabulous job of scheduling these events, Marianne Dietz. Thanks to Jennifer Corcoran and Bev Schermeyer for handling all of Madison Art Society publicity, and to Jen Thompson for handling publicity, our website, all of our technical needs. So we really do have a team here to make this Art Society work, and I'm very grateful, and hopefully the members are enjoying it and benefiting as well from this really great team. All right, I'm going to now introduce you to Bob Thomas, and then we will hand it over to him. Let me just hit this. There we go. All righty. So Robert Thomas, a fine art photographer and printer, has photographed the works of over 70 artists in the Northeast, whose mediums include watercolor, pastel, oil, acrylic, mixed media, and three-dimensional work. His objective is to be as original as the artist in accurately capturing original artwork and providing high-quality archival productions. So this will be an interactive workshop, how-to for using your smartphone as a camera, among other things. Bob will demonstrate how to best photograph your artwork to be used for websites, jury shows, and gallery submissions. You will learn the fundamentals of capturing accurate photographs with your smartphone. Bob will talk about prepping your area for taking your photos, editing your image, and sizing your image. So with that, I will hand it over to Bob, and we will, I'm sure, learn very much tonight. So thank you, Bob.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I will share my screen and start. I've got a presentation that I'll go through, and then I'll be actually doing a demonstration with my smartphone that shows you again the slides that I'll be showing. So let's see. There we are. All right, I hope everyone can see that. Make this a full screen. There we go. All right. So as mentioned in the introduction, we're really going to focus on using your smartphone. I'll talk a little bit about other means, other cameras and so on, but I really want to concentrate on the smartphone because over the past several years, the smartphone has really turned out to be quite a capable, not just camera, but device that allows you to adjust and correct your photo to be able to submit to galleries, shows, and so on. So it's a good source. So what we're going to go through during the session, quick discussion on why you might photograph your art, what camera. Like I say, I'm going to be focusing on the smartphone, but I'll touch on a couple areas, other cameras like single lens reflex or compact cameras and so on. An important thing to consider is the environment that you're using to take the photographs and how that can affect the photograph and what you can do about it. What tools then to correct and adjust. And I'll get into the difference between getting your photo to look like the original versus manipulating it to look like something else. The focus here is to get it to look like, as much as you can, to look like the original. So I'll go through those, then I'll get into a demonstration, and I'll talk a little bit during the demonstration about the size of the file, the format of the file, the color profile. We'll talk about all those things and how to submit and send the image or images that you might have to attach that to a form and send that in for an entry to a show. All right, so why photograph? I really summarize it as sharing, showing, and hopefully selling. And I've listed these topics from top to bottom are sort of on the top, the items that don't require as much effort or technical skill to adjust the images to make them look exactly like the original. When you start getting down to maybe Instagram or Facebook, certainly when you get into a juried show for a galleried submittal, you want your image to look like the original or as best you can. And then there are other reasons you may send to online galleries. You have a website. When you start getting into portfolio proofs and prints and fine art reproduction, there's possibly a little more adjustment, because now, besides taking the picture and sending it as a submittal, you're making a print, and that sometimes is a little more difficulty. But we're going to spend our time tonight talking about juried shows and gallery submittals. All right, what kind of a camera? I've got the smartphone on the top, and as I mentioned earlier, over the past several years, the smartphone has nearly wiped out the second item in that list, the compact camera, because the capability for not just, well, they used to be, they're called a phone. I don't know how much people use them for telephone calls anymore, but they're a computer in your pocket, and they've got a fantastic camera. and you're able to put applications or programs into this computer to make adjustments of images, and as you probably know, many other things. But compact camera still is a very capable device if you have that, or if you have a what's called a single lens reflex or mirrorless camera. Those take generally much larger files for big prints if you wanted to do that. And as you move to the last two, those are used in galleries or museums for archival imaging of fine artwork. I don't have one of those. They get very expensive, but there are other types of devices. We're going to spend our time talking about the smartphone. All right, so which camera now, what environment? Outdoors has a lot of advantages. Especially it's on a cloudy day. A cloudy day gives, as I've got highlighted, a very even distribution of the light. The clouds act like a diffuser over the light source, in this case, the sun. And it minimizes the shadows, which can work for you, but it can also be an issue if you have textured work or three-dimensional work and you want shadows. Then a sunny day can actually give that kind of dimension to your artwork. But cloudy days are generally the best days to photograph your artwork. Like I say, sunny days allow to bring out the shadows from textures, but you can get shadows that come across your artwork. And sometimes it's hard to see that in the bright sunlight. I've taken images of artwork outside, brought it home, and found out, oh no, I didn't see that tree limbs or small branches shadow that went across the painting, and I have to go back out and reshoot it. The way you can minimize that is take a look on the ground where you're about to set up your artwork. Either have somebody hold it for you, or just looking at the ground, see if there are any shadows on the grass or the field, wherever you might be, and just step away from that so that you won't get them across the painting. The other thing to be careful of is shiny surfaces. Let's say you have a glossy finish on your artwork. That could cause glare or hot spots. You usually can walk around a little bit, sort of rotate the artwork to be able to eliminate or certainly reduce the hot spots. So seem to be, oh, there we go. All right, so outdoor lighting, as I mentioned, has advantages. So you see the first image. In this case, my wife, Regina, is holding one of her images outside. The cloudy day gives a very uniform distribution of the light. Another painting here, it's not so much on the painting, but this area isn't glossy and shine, but you can see on the frame here that you can get some reflections off of metallics or glossy surfaces. You just have to be careful. And then you have the other days, the cold days. Sometimes you have to go out, if it's a cloudy day or you need to have something submitted in the middle of December, you go outside. Rainy days are not the days I would go out though, but so there are some issues with outdoors besides cold and rain. Here, this isn't, this isn't so much an issue. This is, it may be hard to see in the presentation here, but this is a textured piece on a collage. And the bright light allowed some shadow to come out and show the texture. On a cloudy day, it might have completely sort of obliterated that. You wouldn't have been able to see the texture. Here, although it doesn't look like a branch, if you compare this area, hopefully you can see me rotating my mouse around the left image, is about equal brightness to the rest of the image, but this is a little darker, and there's some shadow from the trees or maybe some other objects that I didn't notice when taking the picture. The other thing that I've had happen a number of times, and it's just because you get so busy when you're out there photographing that you don't always look at everything, is that if you have an assistant, and especially if it's a windy day, they may have a real tight grip on the artwork. And you can see here, if you're going to submit this whole image, you could crop the fingers out, but you're cropping some of the artwork. So it's just take your time, look at what is being photographed, look for shadows, look for, I keep hitting my mouse there. Look for shadows, look for bright spots in the images, and look for fingers. The other thing that sometimes happens with fingers, this happens to be a canvas. And if you have a canvas that isn't very tightly wrapped and the person is holding it behind, their knuckles can sort of stick through the canvas, and it's very hard to see that until you get the image home and you start editing it, and you see little shadows around these dimples of the fingers that are there. So just things to be aware of. All right, indoors as compared to outdoors, you really need to have the same type of lights, and I'll show you some examples. And we can go through, I'm sure you're aware of all the different types of lights. And of course, you want to have even distribution across the subject. That's pretty easy to do outside. You've got this light source that's quite a distance away. And if it's a cloudy day, you've got a very good distribution and even distribution. But if you're using lights, you really got to look carefully to make sure that the whole image is lit uniformly across it. Where might you photograph it indoors? Ideally, neutral colored space. You could see the room that I use. My wife calls it my cave. The ceiling and the walls are neutral gray, or what's called Kodak gray. And that's even better than white, but you want to have as neutral as you can, or get it some distance away from bright colored walls and objects. If you have a red wall, I'll show you an example of a green one, and the light is bouncing off of that onto the image, of course, you're going to get some color contamination, if you will, on your photograph. And again, if you're really looking at taking the picture and trying to make it right and getting your phone all situated properly, you got to think a little bit about some of these other things that could crop up. All right, different types of light. For years, we almost always had just incandescent light, tungsten light, and that's called a low color temperature. You might hear some people give it a temperature rating in degrees Kelvin. There's a fellow by the name of Kelvin in 1848 who came up with this scaled in temperature and also light scale, but it's called warm and it's usually a yellow shade. Fluorescent lights usually are higher color temperature and what is called cool, and they're up in the 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Kelvin. And recently, we've got these LED lights, and they can be either low or high or selectable. I can show you a little bit about selectable right here. Here are my lights, and trying to find something here. Just by, I don't know if you can actually see that, but it's sort of a red light, and that's just the adjustment that you can get with these LED lights. But the key is to have even lighting. I mean, you could choose any one of these lights, but just one. Don't try to mix incandescent and fluorescent. You want an even lighting and the same type lighting. Your phone will adjust for the difference, warm or cool, with something called automatic white balance, which is a sort of a default in the smart phones. So you want to have the same lighting. And here is just an example of, the warm, sort of a yellow tone, the cool white, and daylight is even more of a blue. As I mentioned, there's this thing called white balance, which is trying to set a neutral tone for a piece of artwork or an image. And smartphones will have a setting, or usually as a default, to use auto white balance, and it will neutralize. So you won't necessarily get a blue image if you're using a daylight versus a yellow image if you're using tungsten, if you have auto white balance on in your camera. So here's an example of mixed light. It's probably a little beyond typical, but I've got a cool light setting on this one LED light on the right, and a warm light, which is more like tungsten, on the left. And again, may be difficult to see, but you're going to get some, I'll call it contamination of color on, on between the two sides. And a camera can adjust for one color of light, but if you have multiple colors, it's going to average it out, and you're going to have some difference, and that will be a problem. So again, the key is, if you're indoors and you're using lights, make sure they're the same type of light. All right, this just shows uniform light distribution of that. All right, staging of artwork. If you can, use an assistant, but as I showed, watch out for fingers, knuckles, things like that. An assistant will also move a little bit, so that's another dimension, if you will, that you want to try to eliminate. If you have an easel, that's nice, because that takes one thing out of movement, and the only thing moving right now would be you holding your smartphone, or as shown in this image here. I'm not saying you need to use a tripod, but if you have a tripod, it allows you to take the time to align things and make sure that you get an image that doesn't require much adjustment. It's good to hang on a neutral colored wall. And you'll see a color contamination issue here. Here's up on top is the proper color for this mixed media image. And again, I'm not sure how this translates on Zoom, But with this green wall, well, it's a piece that I put in the room to simulate that. And the light was bouncing off that and then onto the painting. You get color contamination. This could be adjusted because it seems to be relatively uniform, but sometimes just one side of the image or one area might be contaminated, and it can be cleaned up, but it's work. It's good to eliminate those things. These are the ideal settings. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but you can see the camera is being held either by yourself or in this case by a tripod, and it's right at the center of the image that's against the wall. If you're doing a lot of photographs and you want to get through them relatively quickly, it's good to set something like this up, putting your painting on an easel, putting your camera on a tripod. And if you've got 10 or 15 paintings you need to photograph, this might be worth your time to set up. The lights should be at a 45-degree angle, so it's going to give you a uniform crossing of the light. And if you can, just like a cloudy day, use some diffusers. I think I've got some pictures. Yeah, here are things that are called soft boxes that can be put on lights. Again, majority of the time that's not required, but if you're planning on getting into doing a fair bit of photography of your artwork, this setup here, which just shows one, happens to be a fluorescent light in a big softbox. I got 2 of those with spare lights from Amazon for $70. So again, typically, you know, if you're going to do a couple images, that's not what you need to do. But if you're going to take a fair number of photographs, it's amazing what you can get at a reasonable price. All right, now that we're, you know, we've talked about the environment, we're going to get into a little discussion of the camera and the application. So this, I'm, as I say at the bottom there, I'm differentiating between taking the picture and editing or manipulating the after you've taken the picture to get it to look exactly the same. The standard application, that may be all that is needed to take the photograph. There are, in fact, if you go to the Google Play Store or you go to the Apple store for apps, it seems like every week there's a new application that's being added. Many of those are for significant changes. You know, if you're doing stuff for TikTok or something like that, you may want to use a different kind of an app that really makes your image look like something that's a negative or whatever. But the ones that I list here are the advanced applications. They can be more complex, but they allow for a lot of manual adjustment that may not be in the standard apps. But again, the vast majority of photographs for your artwork for submission to a show or to a gallery or even to put on your website can all be handled with the standard applications that come with your phone. All right, this is one thing. This is I'm an iPhone user, so I apologize to the Android users. I'm not as familiar, but I'm sure there are very similar settings. One setting on the camera is grid, and that may be the default on Google Android cameras, phones. But I find on the iPhone, I have to go into settings, select the camera, and turn on the grid. And this allows you to, it's like a piece of graph paper. You know, it's not very fine graph paper. I wish it were a little bit more fine. Some of the more advanced applications allows you to get a finer grid, but this is a good starting point, and I'll show you pictures. It allows you to line things up. You know, have I got the camera, you know, in the same plane as the piece of artwork? Do I have it shifted a little bit? And the grid helps. So that's on your smartphone. That's a setting I suggest that you make to your phone. All right, I've mentioned this a couple times. You know, it's best, not a requirement, but you know, it's nice to use a tripod. It makes sure that you know, you're not moving, and you would potentially have a blurry image. The thing I call square up. You know, when you put it on a tripod, you can move the tripod around. You could and make sure, looking at the grid before you take the picture, that everything's lined up. If there isn't a tripod that you're using, then you know, you might just take a little more time looking at the grid as you're taking the picture to make sure that you get it as close. I don't think I've ever been able to get it perfect handheld. You can get pretty close, and so there's not a lot of adjustment that has to be done to what I call squared up. These below the box that says settings shown are mainly for separate cameras. If you're using an SLR or even a compact camera, you want to use a high camera resolution and quality setting. There's what's called a RAW file. You want to set it to that. And you want to set the white balance to the same as the light. With these cameras, you can set different white balances for fluorescent light or tungsten light, or at least auto white balance. But if
Can I
you're
just
using,
interject?
sure.
I'm so sorry. Pardon me
Yep.
for one moment. I
No.
just want people to not be feverishly writing all of this down.
Oh, good point.
We just texted, or rather chatted, that this will all be available on the website at the Madison Art Society, CTE.org website. Tomorrow, this video will be up, and all of these slides will be up as well. So you don't need to be writing in fast motion here to get all of this information in. So
Or you're taking your
rest
camera and
assured.
taking a photograph of every slide.
Exactly. So everybody
Right.
can sit back and enjoy and listen, and then refer back tomorrow.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Okay, so camera settings. This is just a screen that shows one of those more complex cameras and the settings that I might have. We're talking about smartphones. Now, Marianne had sent out to a number of you early on, those of you that may have registered early, and said, if you've got any questions, send them in. And I got several questions that I've just picked a few here that I think help focus in on some of the issues and some of the things that we're really trying to accomplish here. But Laurel had this question, and I think it's a very good one, is that, you know, different cameras and different environments can sometimes give you a blue or a red or some other shift color image. And even though you can adjust for that, usually you can get it out with white balance, but I'll show you in some of these applications how you can take the blue out or take the red out and get it back to neutral or looking like your artwork. But the prospectus says no digital alterations. Now, I differentiate between image correction and alteration. I do photography, and I admit I do a lot of alteration. You know, if I see a telephone pole in some part of my image, I've got tools that'll take that telephone pole out. But if you're making the image, the photograph, match the original, I don't think that's a digital alteration. I think that's a correction from what the camera captured to your artwork. And what we'll be talking about is not altering the color and making it dramatically different, but getting it to look like the original. And then the question follows on saying, with pastel, that's true also with other mediums, oil and so on, different reflected light through the layers of the pastel, or is a difference in camera sensitivity? Well, the pigments that you're using, whether it's pastel, oil, watercolor, acrylic, all of them are, affected a little bit differently with the light, different types of light. And the camera has a device that is capturing that image, and it's capturing it always a little bit differently. If you set, like I say, auto white balance, you have good uniform lighting of the same type, you'll find you'll get pretty darn close right after you take the image. It might even be just the way you want it. But there are these transformations, and I'll show that on the next slide, through this whole process that you can't expect it to be perfect just taking the photo. All right, so second question is, after taking and sending it to somebody for show, or if it's like entry into a juried show, is it a good idea to edit it? Would editing give a misleading impression? I guess I have a question about what kind of edit is being done. I mean, if you're finding that the color wasn't quite right to accurate to the original, I don't think that's necessarily misleading, because if you get accepted at the show with the original image that you sent in, and then you bring in your original artwork, and it's quite a bit different, I think re-editing and probably telling the jury that, I found this mistake is probably a good idea. But that's why it's important to look closely before you say you're finished with the image. All right, and this is what I was talking about, transformations. There's a pastel by a very famous pastel artist. I think he's a member of the Madison Art Society. But the original pastel, and again, the way the light, depending on what kind of lights are on it, you may get a little bit different look. And so here I'm doing image capture. I've got a nice uniform, neutral colored room. I've got lights, but the lights are probably different than the lights that the artist was using when he created the work. So you're going to have a little bit, and of course it's going into this computer inside your phone, and it's got a device in there, an imager that might transform the things a little bit. Then you're either staying in your phone and doing image adjustment, but you're going to another computer, and that other computer is probably a little bit different as far as how it displays colors. And ultimately, if you're going to a juror, they've got yet another computer. So what you can do is make sure that you get, from your perspective, the best image that you're sending out, and realize that there may be some differences along the way, because each of these devices might be set up slightly different. Hopefully, if it's a juror, they've gone through calibrating their equipment, and that's a whole separate subject that we won't talk about. All right, so this question that Jen had sent in really sort of covers the rest of the presentation, and we'll go into these items. First, we'll take an image, then we'll adjust it to get it straight and true and square, or whatever term you want to use. Once that is done, you want to crop it so that you're not cropping the image itself, but typically when you take a photograph, you've got other areas of the environment that are you want to leave some space around when you take the picture if you have to make some adjustment. So you're going to crop to just the image. Sometimes you need to leave the frame in the picture to show that at a gallery. All right, so after you've cropped it, many times there's a requirement for a show to rename it in a specific manner. This is typical: last name, first name, the title, the medium, and the price. So how do you rename an image if you're taking it on your smartphone? How do you save it, to your phone or to your computer so that you can retrieve it and send it on an email or attach it to a form? Here it is, uploaded images to the application. How do you get a high quality image? We'll go through that. Generally, the new phones take a very high quality image. Where it gets to a smaller image is if you take the picture and you want to send it to somebody as an email, and it'll ask you the question, do you want to send a small image or a large image? And if you try to send these big images that are available on the new phones on an email today, it might be a problem. So you send the small image. And the small images sometimes come around, very small. This is a measurement of a file size, 40 to 60 kilobytes. It's better to get a bigger image, about what's called 1 megabyte. And you'll see when we go through the simulation here, or the test, that that's typically where we're going to come. I figured out why they've got this kind of sizing for images when they're sent to jurors or to shows. We're not talking about inches here. It's picture elements. And 1920 was 1,920, it's not the year, was the size of the typical monitor display in its width in the past. Now that's much higher resolution, but we'll see how to set your saving a file to 1920. And I've seen many shows, and they all seem to request typically that size. All right, so this is the process. You're gonna, after you take the picture, now you gotta get it to look right. You gotta straighten it, crop it. You may have to, not always, but you may have to brighten it or darken it. Maybe you had it in too bright a room, but again, you're looking at your phone, which is actually a pretty good display. The phones over the last 3 or 4 years, very high quality. And you want to get what you see on your phone to look as closely as what your original is. We'll do white balance adjustment, color correction, the sizing of the file to get it to be right size for the entry to the show, changing the name of the file, the title. These last 2 items really are things for people who are taking these photos with one of these bigger cameras, because you can set different types of files, and you want to have what's called a JPEG, Joint Picture Enterprise Group, something to remember for your trivia quizzes. But the JPEG is the kind of file that you want to send. That'll give you a nice, small, relatively small size. And the other thing is what's called a color space. And again, you don't have to worry about it on a smartphone, but if you're working with a single lens reflex camera or something, or an application that's on a computer, you could send it drops the S off here, and it'd be an RGB, which is good for printers, but it looks very garish on a monitor, and you don't want to send that in to a juror for a show. So if you're using a smartphone, don't worry about it. It's going to default to JPEG and sRGB. If you're somewhat familiar with these programs like Photoshop and Lightroom, you have the ability to make different selections. Set it to these when you're sending it to a show. All right, apps. We're going to go through a couple apps. There are a whole bunch for image editing and modification. I think there's a lot more for modification to make funny looking things. What we really want to do is get an accurate representation of the artwork. The apps that come with your camera have many of the features like cropping and changing the exposure, all of those kinds of things. But there's one key thing that I haven't found on the smartphone standard built-in, comes with a phone applications. And that's why I've got a couple that meet the needs of accurate image preparation, and we'll go through those two applications. If you're doing some photographs with your artwork and you're satisfied with what you get as an image, I'm not saying for you to switch over to these, but these two applications that I'm going to first walk through the slides and then do a demonstration solve all the problems I've found with taking pictures with a smartphone. All right, so hopefully nobody has a headache right now. But I'm going to walk through the screens on the camera and this one application called Snapseed. These are free applications. There's no spending money to get need to spend money. They're quite capable. And another one called Resize. And then I'll do a demonstration. Hopefully we'll have enough time to do a demonstration as well. So just bear with me, if you will.
And also, Bob, I'm sorry to interject once again. For people that are feeling overwhelmed, that this is just beyond them, we can help you with that in the future. So if this is just feeling too difficult or advanced, then we will figure out a way to maybe do some kind of small group tutorial or something, because this isn't easy. It isn't easy. So we understand that, and Bob understands that as well. So we'll let him move forward, and hopefully people are learning little bits and pieces here, and maybe others will be very clear by the end.
Yeah,
Bob.
Okay. And like you said, this is going to be a video that people can watch, and we're getting to about 50 minutes into it. And if you sort of move ahead to that point in the video, you'll see this walkthrough of just the screen captures from the apps. But then later, it'll probably be even better with the demo and re-watching that. And a lot of this stuff, as far as how to use these applications, is on YouTube and up on the web as well. All right. So here are the applications that I've used. Snapseed, I love how they write it up. This is their quote. Lets you achieve all the features and quality editing you would find and expect in professional picture editing software. Yeah, pretty much. And it's free. I don't know if I could say, but without all the complexities, there's some things you got to learn. So I found this to be, and by the way, when you get this presentation, you can click on the blue, and that'll take you directly to a web page on Snapseed. And it's the same app for the Android phones or for the Apple phones. It's identical, and it's no charge. And this does most of the work. This is a thing that squares up the image. It allows you to do the cropping. And if you're done with it and it looks good, then you don't have to do things that come later, like maybe you have to change the exposure, make it a little brighter or darker. Maybe you have to shift the white balance because it's got a blue or a red kind of hue to it. Snapseed will allow you to do that, but you may not need to use all of those tools. And then this other one called image size, and I added that because Snapseed, although it has the capability to do image size, it doesn't seem to be working as well as it did in the past on the iPhone. I've followed this on the web, and there seems to be some sort of a little bug in there. But image size allows you to resize the image essentially to whatever size you'd like. But in our case, it's going to be 1,920 pixels on the long dimension.
Bob, here's
all
a
right.
question, excuse me, that pertains right here.
Okay.
Mary Horgan is asking, does it matter, since you're discussing editing and apps used for editing, does it matter whether I edit first on the phone or later on the computer? So.
Well, it's whatever,
ahead.
you know, I don't want to, I'm sorry, was that it or?
That is the question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's a good question. I mean, if you have the ability to edit on the computer, and there are programs that allow you to do all of these things on a computer, I find the computer easier to use because you don't have big fat fingers like I have that you're trying to use on a screen of a phone. You know, you have a mouse, oops, and the mouse changes to everything just by lifting it up. All right, there we go. I won't do that again. And you have a keyboard. If you have the application and you're comfortable with them to do the kinds of things we're going to talk about, which is squaring up, cropping, setting the right brightness or exposure, maybe taking a tint out, I would do it on a computer. But a lot of people don't either have a computer or have the applications that you need to most of the time buy that allows you to do these things. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but you could do some of the editing on the phone and then save it onto your phone or up onto iCloud and then bring it down onto your computer to finish it with whatever tools. It's pretty much what you have available and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, some people may not even know how to deal with transferring. Oh, excuse me. Some people may not know how to even transfer, from the phone to the computer. All of that is another realm. So
well, I'll at least show how you might do that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But I'm just saying, if you've got a computer and you've got some of the programs and you're comfortable doing that, we'll go through what we're doing on Snapseed. You may have a program on the computer that doesn't do one thing that Snapseed does. So you could do that on Snapseed, save the file, and then edit it on your computer further. All right, so this is just typically what I get when I take half my pictures. Things are not square, but the first thing that we want to do is to straighten the image. And this isn't the iPhone here, it's the camera, but you see the grid, and the grid allows you to sort line up, making sure that you're going to get as square or straight an image. Here, it's not quite square. It's not rotated, but it's tilted back a bit. So I could make an adjustment on my tripod to help in setup. But these are some of the things that you can have that you have to adjust for. The image is tilted back a little bit, and so your vertical is going to be out. The image is rotated to the right, or you've walked to the right and you've walked to the left. And so the horizontal plane is shifted. You could hold your camera rotated a little bit one way or the other, and these are probably exaggerated images. And you'd have to correct rotation, which is pretty easy to do. The one that's difficult is compound, meaning I've got a combination of these things. It's maybe a little horizontal, maybe rotated a little bit, so Snapseed allows you to take care of that. All right, so once you've downloaded Snapseed, this is what the logo looks like. You can see I got a bunch of things here on my phone that allows me to edit photos. We're going to talk about Snapseed. After you click on that, you're going to get this blank screen. Now, just to restate, I'm going to walk through these screens so you'll get an idea of what you'll see in the demonstration. So I'm going to walk through a whole series of screens, which may be quite boring, but there are things that you can go back and reference. And then I'm going to show you again by taking my smartphone and doing a share screen from my smartphone, how I do all of this. Okay, so after you click on the app, you're going to get this blank screen. You click on the plus to select a photo. You could select more photos. You can open them from the device. You can even take a photo with your camera and bring it right into Snapseed because your phone is a camera. So I could select more photos. In this case, I've selected more photos and I've got a little check mark here. I clicked on that one with my finger. And so that's the image that's selected. You can see I've got some weird things in my image library here. So once I say done, I open up, and this is an image I took of another piece of artwork that my wife had done, and it's sitting on an easel. And I get this, and it opens up with things that you can do to the image that you don't want to. It's accentuate, and you want to click on the tools first and go to straighten the image with this thing called perspective. I haven't been able to find this. This is the one thing that Snapseed has that I haven't been able to find yet in any other app on a phone. So that's why I like Snapseed. It also has many other things, but this is one thing that makes Snapseed different. If I have that image that I showed, I'll go back to that slide, of this compound thing, if I try to crop it, I'm going to cut off this. I'm going to cut off quite a bit of the image just to get the image. So, excuse me. So if you have a computer, Photoshop allows you to do that. Lightroom allows you to do that. And there are other apps. But on your phone, Snapseed allows you to do it by selecting perspective. So we'll go through that. All right, I've clicked on perspective. I'm going to straighten the image. This one happens to be pretty straight. You can see by the grid. And you click on select free. So you have these 4 points. And if you can see it, it's pretty hard to see here, but the right corner is up a little bit higher than the left corner. It's not perfectly, the vertical is off a little bit. And so you take your finger, and I would recommend these little capacitive, it's got a little felt tip on it. You can get these again at Staples or Best Buy or Amazon for a couple dollars. And it allows you to be more accurate in your movement. So you take this little device or your finger, and what I would do is I'd just move this up a little bit or push it down in this case to get it square, or I might move this side up just to get it in the grid. Once you start pulling on one of these, you get even a closer grid that allows you to look at it better. It isn't changed, although it looks like it's changed on the screen, until you accept it. So you can go back and you make more adjustments and stuff. And then when you say that looks good, it will make those changes by clicking on accept. Okay. So now we've got the image straight. I go back to the tools and I select crop. And what crop allows you to do, you'll get, this shows after the crop has taken place, but you'll have bars around the image, around the whole frame, and you'll just pull down, whoops, I can't do that. Or you just pull down with your finger or with one of these guys till you get that bar right down to the top. You pull it over to the left, you pull it over to the right until you've got these markers on just the image. Again, it isn't done till you accept and click this. And so here's the result. It gets rid of all of that background, and you've got just your image, square, true, all that kind of stuff. So now maybe you need to tune the image a little bit, the brightness and tone. If this looks good on your screen, you're at least done with Snapseed. If it looks too dark or the color is a little off, then you might do, I say again, might do some of these other things. And if it's too dark or a little color shift, we're going to go a little further. We click on the tools again, and you're going to tune the image. And this is what you get after you click on tune. Like I said, that's not what you get, but this is why you do it. You may have underexposed, overexposed. So you need to brighten or darken the image. And that's pretty easy to do with all programs, in the standard program that comes with your phone. So here, once you click on that, you get these adjustment bars, and you see you can adjust the brightness, you can adjust the saturation. Once you start getting down to these areas, you may be making some bigger adjustments to the image. But again, you want it to look on the screen the way the original does, and you may need to do things besides brightness. Typically, all you need to do is, if it's too dark, you may need to increase the brightness. In this case, I reduced the brightness. And although, again, it's hard to see, this is a little bit darker image, and I click commit. And now I'm going to go back to the tools if I need to correct for color shifts. And this relates a little bit to, I think, the question of sometimes you get a blue image or a red image. It may be that the lighting or reflection off of something has given that color tone. So you click on the tools again, and then you can select white balance. And there's two ways you can adjust that. I'll tell you my preference, but you can click on, again, these adjustment sliders, and you can adjust the temperature, that color temperature. Again, cooler or higher temperature will get more of a bluish tone in the image. Warmer or more of a yellow will give you more of a yellow tone. And again, you just take your finger and slide the temperature up or down, and you'll see it immediately change on the image. What I like to use is just if you have a neutral color in your artwork, gray or white, I like this little color picker. You click on that and it'll, again, I'll demonstrate this, but you'll get this little magnifying glass and you'll see the color picker and a little X, and I'm picking a white section of this image, and it's amazing. You just click on that and it just seems to neutralize and adjust the colors uniform from that. So that may be something you need to do. All right, so now we've done the truing up, squaring up of your image, getting it straight so that when you crop it, you're not taking parts of the image out just to get the image. So you got it straight, you're cropping it. You may want to adjust the brightness. You may want to adjust a little bit the color. Chances are you may not even have to do that, but I just wanted to show you that you can do it with this app. Now, there are several ways to save this, and I've chosen save a copy, and that allows a copy to be saved back to your photos library on your phone. And the reason you're doing that is because this program, the next program, resizing, goes and looks there for the photo to size. So this is the icon for image size. It's free, but I'll warn you, it's got ads, and I hate that, but it does one thing, actually a couple things. It allows you to size it and rename it. And you can spend a little money, I think $11, and it'll take away the ads. But if you use this once a month, forget it, just leave the ads in. But I'll warn you, it's got a little bit of ads. So first thing you do, the initial screen is going to be blank because you haven't picked an image yet. You're going to click on this options for the program. And the next slide will show you what those options are. Most of them are all set up. The one thing that you want to do is what I've circled here. And this is setting the size and type of file that you're going to get out of this program. So like I mentioned before, it's when you look at the file, it'll be JPG. But the actual naming of it is JPEG, or a Joint Picture Enterprise Group. Must have been an interesting group of people, I guess. So that it'll already be defaulted, but this slider is important because the higher the quality, if you go up to 100%, there's not going to be any compression because JPEGs actually make a smaller file. I usually select somewhere between 80 and 90%. And that gives you, for a jury, a perfectly good image. And like I say, the higher you go, the bigger the file will be. If you go way down here, you may have, like 10%. What it does is it says, well, like this yellow is, when I get down to 10 or 5%, looks sort of close to this yellow, which is quite a bit different, as you see. And it will create a file where it combines those two together. So you don't want to generally go below 80%. So 80 to 90%, and that's one setting that you have to make. And then I click back on this back arrow, And now what I'm going to do is select an image. So I click on this, allows me to select an image. And again, I'm going to go through this with a demonstration. Yeah, I think we've got plenty of time. And so what this, with these settings, allows you to put in what you want as width and height. If you've got something that is sort of landscape type, you know, where the width is greater than the height, you're going to put in, as it shows on this last image here, 1920 as the pixels. So you want to make sure pixels are selected. You don't want to have inches or whatever here, but pixels. So if that's not selected, it's the default, but if it isn't, click on pixels and you put in 1920. If on the other hand, this is more of a tall portrait, it's called image, you would put the 1920 on this side. And by having this as linked, you clicked on it, it will automatically adjust the other side to match. So it doesn't crop, it doesn't cut anything out. The only thing to know is if you've got an image that's horizontal versus vertical, where do you put the 1920? And making sure that's clicked, and you don't have to click it. If you click it, it turns off. So if that's highlighted in blue like it is, just leave it. And it'll automatically adjust the other side and won't crop anything out of your image. What you see down here is that the original image was 2 megabytes. And by making this adjustment, it's going to be a 1 megabyte file. So that's a reasonable size file. You know, even 2 megabytes is okay, but for emailing or sending along on a file. So now what we've done is we've resized it, but we haven't saved it. So we want to save this file, save this image. All right. So, I guess I didn't put a little circle. Imagine, if you will, I have put a circle around here. You want to click on this because this allows you to go to different locations to save your file. And I clicked on it and I get this screen. This is still in the resize application. You can save the file, you can pick, you may not have all of these different places, but I like to save it to files. And in my iCloud or Google Drive, I've created a directory called Photos for Art. You know, you could just put it right on the desktop if you want. But you see the name of that file? You don't want to send that name. But this was taken June 15th of 2021 at 11, I don't know exactly what that is, 11 something in the afternoon. That's not the name that you want to send, okay? So when you pick this location and you get ready and you click on save, you're able to, you get this that comes up, you can rename the document. And I know for the Madison Art Society, you want to have your last name, your first name, the title. We can't show everything on the screen. And then the medium and the size and the price. And you can do all of that, which is relatively easy to do on a computer, but if you're working on a smartphone, this allows you to change it. And then you click done. And so you now have changed the name from this somewhat cryptic thing to one that is usable to connect to your form. And that's the last thing we're going to go over here. So this is a form that you would have to enter a show. This is sort of a simulation that was put together for this, but you've probably filled out these kinds of forms before. But this is, I just would go to the Madison Art Society webpage and say entries to shows or something like that, and say entry form, and you would click on it and it would open this up. This is showing the screen on the smartphone. You could do the same thing on your computer. So I click on this, it opens this up, I fill the name and so on. And this is the important thing, choosing the file. I can, go to the photo library, or I can go to browse and go to a different location. And in this case, I picked, this is the file that I changed the name. Here's the completion of filling it out. So, a lot of stuff. Now let's do this. Let's do the demo. I got to wake you up. Time to wake up. So do we need a quick break? I don't need a break. I can go right into this. How are we doing on time? Oh, good.
Let's see. Yeah, it is what? It's 7:49. Maybe we should see if there are any questions out there. That can be our break. Ask maybe a couple of questions are out there. And if not, I say you forge ahead.
Yeah, this probably, the demo will probably answer a bunch of questions, because you'll actually see me fumbling around a bit, but using my phone to actually do what I showed on the screens. It just helps to sort of reinforce to see the screens, a little description, and then actually do the demo. But if there is a question, I'd be happy to try to answer it.
Okay. I don't see any coming through. If anybody has a question that has been missed, please.
All right, well, I'll get started.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to do is stop share, and then I'm going to share from my phone, which is always fun. Share screen, and go to my phone, and hopefully in a minute. This is always tricky to get this thing to open up.
It's technology, Bob.
Well,
Of course, it's
sometimes
tricky.
it's like I say, fat fingers. You're supposed to be able to pull from the upper left part of the, there we did. You can't see the screen mirroring yet, but here we go. In a moment here, hopefully. Doesn't seem to be working right now. There you go. You should see my, this is my phone you're looking at. And I'm gonna get out of here. And I'm not going to turn on the camera because I'm going to move around, and I don't want anybody to have motion sickness until I get up here. But that is my home screen. I got a lot of apps.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them you can get.
Yes.
All right, you should also be able to see a smaller image of me, and I know that you can make it a little bit bigger, but I'm going to use this easel, and I'm going to take this image, this piece of artwork, and I'm going to photograph it. And there, I think you can see that. This may not be the ideal set of conditions because I don't have the lights coming in on both sides, but picture, if you will, that I've got that set up. Now I'm going to go to my camera, and I'm going to go slowly here. I don't know how well you can, you can see the grid. It's fine lines, okay? Down there, it's in sort of a grid of, what do we got, 9 squares. And I'm going to take a little time here because, you know, you don't want to be in here. I'm cropping the image. I'm going to cut off the sides. So I move back a little bit and I want to leave some space. The reason I want to leave some space around the picture rather than coming in right here on the image is that if I have to rotate it a little bit or I have to true it up, if I'm right on top of it here and I rotate it now, I'm going to cut off, you know, depending on where I rotate, I'm going to cut off a corner or two. So I get back a little bit, give it a little air, and you can see like this, I'm rotated. I've got that line. I'll put it down at the bottom. That looks pretty good. Should I take a good picture or a bad picture? Why don't I take a bad picture? Show you how we can fix it. All right, so I'm off horizontal. I'm rotated a little bit. And I'm going to take that picture. Okay. So I've got that picture. Now what I want to do is get that into the program Smart Snapseed, excuse me. All right, so I go and look on my library here, and these are all, that's one of 2 pages of photo apps, but you can see down in the lower right-hand corner, Snapseed. I click on that. Since I've been using it, it may already have a photo come up. Nope. Oh, it does. All right. So I want to get that picture, and there it is. You know, when I click on open, which I did there on the top left, there's the last image I took, and I'm going to click on that. And there it is. All right. So down at the bottom of the screen, you've got, you know, I'll say weird things that you could do. You can get it to pop or accentuate or smooth out. You don't want to do that. That's changing the look of it. One thing I want to point out, I just noticed on this photo I took, if you look down in the lower, almost right at the bottom, not quite in the center, but shifted a little bit off to the left, you see a bright spot? That's a little glare because this is a shiny surface. And I should have looked a little bit better before I took the picture. Probably just moved the easel a little bit one way or the other to make sure I didn't have that glare. And you can get the same kind of thing outdoors, and you just need to look before you photograph. And then if it's there, try moving a little bit, and many times you get rid of the glare. But I'm not going to go back. I'm going to show you how to straighten this. All right, so down to the bottom center is tools. Click on tools, and there's that thing called perspective in the second row. Second one from the left, click on that. And it already has free. If I didn't have free, which is the 4 items that are sort of at the bottom of the image, what I want to do is pick free. So it allows me to freely adjust. And I'm going to take my little tool here. In fact, I could sit down now and be a little steadier because, and I'm working, working right on the screen. I'm going to take the lower left corner and pull that down, and see I get a little bit sharper, more squares in that, and I can shift the top a little bit. Maybe pull the bottom out. So it takes a little bit of, that's pretty good. If I go in the center, right in the center of the image, I can sort of move it around at the various lines and see how good it is. That's pretty good. It's not great. So I might do a little more adjustment on the bottom. just stop for a second. Typically, you're not going to get as bad an image as I just created here. You know, you're not going to shift off to the side, have your camera rotated, all that kind of stuff, because you're going to look carefully and hold, either use a tripod or hold the phone to make sure it's squared up. You wouldn't maybe even have to go through this, but I'm just trying to show you what the tool can do given given a bad photo like this. All right, so now I've got something that looks pretty square. And again, I've got to commit. I've got to hit this little check mark down on the lower right. So I commit that. All right. And I said, once I get a square, what do I want to do? I want to crop it. So I go to the tools, and although they look the same, expand and crop. Expand allows you to sort of stretch the whole image out. You want to just crop this. And although it may be tough to see in a zoom, you got a little bar at the top. I'm moving it down from the top to the image, to the artwork. I'm doing the same thing on the bottom here. And then on the right side, I didn't get that perfect. And then on the left side. And so now I've moved the little marks to just the artwork. Again, it's not done until I commit, hit the check mark, boom. There's my image. It's square. Now, we may be done here. Or we may need to go to the tools and adjust, you know, the white balance or tune the image. I'm going to click on tune the image, and that allows me to pull up that menu that allows me to change the brightness. Let's say I want to reduce the brightness. I think it looks pretty close to the image, but just for demonstration purposes. So I clicked on brightness, and I'm going up towards the top of the screen. Where is it there? I'm going to, right at the top, it says brightness 0, and there's a little mark down in the center, and I move this. I've reduced it quite a bit. That doesn't look like the original, but just to show you what you can do. Again, this isn't done yet. I can say, well, that's not what I want. I can move it back and make it bright. So I'm just demonstrating you have a lot of capability with this. You say brightness is done. Maybe I want to, I wouldn't recommend this, but you know, maybe I want to change the saturation, you know, make the colors even brighter.
And
Oh my
Bob,
gosh.
excuse me.
Yep.
Can you please remind everybody or show people what you're using? We have a question from Lucia Shao Wen.
Yeah. This, in fact, where am I here? Oh, there I am. This is a device that has a little sort of felt, or it's actually a rubber tip, and it can be used on any capacitive screen, and smartphones and tablets have, and some computers have touch screens, and you can get these for like $5. You can get them at, like I say, Best Buy, Staples, Amazon. I got 2 of them for $5 from Amazon. It's just a touch screen pencil kind of thing. And if you're doing things on a touch screen, you know, I have a Mac computer and it isn't a touch screen, so this wouldn't work with it, but it works on the phone, it works on the tablet. So by using that, it allowed me to sort of more carefully move the corners and get this square. And I'm not going to change the the saturation. I'm going to X this out, get rid of that. But like I say, you can select white balance. White balance allows you, you're on auto white balance right now. You can change the temperature. I clicked on the auto white balance and it changed it. I could change the temperature a little bit more. It's going to make it more yellow. Oops. So again, just showing what can be done if the image on the screen doesn't match your artwork. I'm not going to do that either. So export is the last thing that you would do here. And I'm going to save a copy. And it'll save it to the photos. And the only thing that was really changed, you saw it come up, flash up saying the perspective. So I'm done with Snapseed right now. And the last thing I need to do, well, there's two things I need to do, is I need to get the size of the file right. And I need to change the name. All right. So I'm going to close out of this program. And I'm going to look for my photo resizing. And I've found a couple, but the best one I found is image size. So I'm going to open up that app. And you see it comes up with a blank kind of a purplish screen. There's no image selected yet. And I've got the volume on my phone down. Otherwise, you might even hear, there, I just turned it down. You might even hear some music with the ads. Like I say, it's a little frustrating with that. So up in the upper left, there's an image that you see there. Oh, first thing you do is click on the gear to make sure that, yeah, it's sort of where I set, but you can adjust the quality down. I wouldn't put it down. It's now showing 54. I wouldn't put it down that far. But like I say, anywhere between 80 and 90. If you're getting a little bit larger files, you can keep it around 80. Doesn't have to be exact. And it's set to a JPEG file, which is great. Some of these other things are related to doing printing. And you see, you can remove the ads for $11.99. I'm not suggesting you do that, but if you don't use it that often, I don't think you need to at all. Okay, so now I've set what I'm going to set up for the quality of the image. It's going to be a JPEG. I'm just, because I had set this up to this standard right now, I'm going to set this up to 3000. Just say it wasn't set to the standard that the images are being asked to be sized to. So I click on the upper left. It shows a little picture there. I'm going to go get my images. Oh, there it is. It's a squared up, cropped. Let's say I change brightness and all that stuff. I've got that image and here it is. Okay. I look at it. Boy, that is a hot spot down there. I'd probably reshoot this. But so I click, it's on the screen, say, yep, that's what I want. Hit choose. And it's going to resize it to 3000 by 2603. Well, that's not what we want. This should be 1920. And I'm going to click on that. Oops, I don't want the height at 5. Oh, didn't have the height there. So there. So it is going to give me a file size of about 1 megabyte. And the last thing I want to do is save this. So down again at the bottom, you have that. It looks like 3 dots and a triangle. This allows me to save it to different locations I click on that, and I could put it on my iMac, send it over there. I could email it right now, but you want to save this file so that you can attach it to the form. So I save it to files, and look, it's got that weird name. Watch when I click on it. Rename. I just clicked on the name, and now I can give it, and I'm not going to type all of that in there, but to your requirements of last name, and then you pick the underscore. This is where a computer is faster than your fingers on an iPhone, but first name.
Bob, excuse me, while we're talking
Yep.
about resizing and
Yep.
the 1920 setting that you were just showing us, Laurel Friedman asks if you can change the DPI in the image size.
Well, that is a great question, because it really doesn't matter until you're doing printing that it really changes the size of the file. What I didn't show you actually on the screen is that it's going to be 72 DPI, even if you set it to 300 or 360. That really only is relevant to when you're printing. And people a number of times say, make sure that this file comes to me at 300 DPI. If you're doing this on a computer that has a program that allows you to adjust it's actually pixels per inch, not dots per inch, which is related to printing, but we seem to interchange those. Save two files. Save a file set to 72 DPI or PPI, and then save the same file. You have to put a slightly different name, like a copy, on it. Save it at 300 DPI. It'll be the same size file. What affects the size? Whoops. I went out. I went to sleep. What affects the size of the file are the number of pixels. And that's why you set it to whatever requirement you have, which is 1920. So the number of pixels, 1,920 pixels per inch, will be in this case, the width of that image. If I set it to 5,000 pixels per inch, it would be a 2.5 times larger file. So I'm getting into the weeds, but changing the PPI doesn't really, or DPI doesn't really have an effect on the file size when you're just sending them, on email and so on. Okay. A lot of times they ask for 300, but like I say, if you save it at 72 or you save it at 300, it's going to be exactly the same file. That is instructions more for printing. Okay. Maybe I could get a quote out of a web thing and send that, and then you could send it out to the folks. All right, now I got to see if I can get back to sharing my screen.
Okay, while you're doing that, Yvonne Gordon Moser wanted to share the digitalcameraworld.com and Amazon have tripods for cell phones to steady the when you take the photo, to make things more steady.
I'm gonna just grab my one of the tripods.
And just to do a time check, we are at almost 8:15.
Oh.
So we'll probably be listening to a few more points from you.
Yeah, I had just one more point, and that is to fill the form out. But yeah, it was a good point. You can go to Amazon, you can get holders for your smartphone, which are can go, my phone went out again, but can go to a tripod, and this will fit, our phone will fit right in there. And it gives you a nice steady way of, see if I can get to the one last thing.
Boy, time sure does fly, Bob. With all this
A lot of good-
interesting information that very
Yeah.
pertinent and important, very important for us to know as artists. If we want to show our
Hopefully
work and
it's-
not have it hanging just in our own homes. So,
Yeah, and it, like I say, it's you. Here we go. I finally get the screen sharing and the very last thing. All right, I don't want this to go to sleep again. So
mhm.
what I want to do now is I've, gone through all the aspects of capturing the image, squaring the image, cropping the image, maybe adjusting the brightness and color a little bit. I've sized it, I've named it, and I've saved it. So now I want to attach it to the form. And what I need to do is go to the web, because it's a web form. And I want, oh, I actually have it there.
Mhm.
And this is the form. Now it looks a little different on a smartphone because a smartphone has such a small screen. If you have a tablet or a computer, it's not going to look as funky as it does here. But so this is the form that you would fill out. In my case, it's just going to populate my name and all that stuff, but I could put in, whatever. It's nice if you've already got this set up. So key point, and I'll stop after this, is you got to choose the file. So this allows me to go out and browse in, well, see, these are other ones that I've set up. Going into desktop, photos of art, and oh, here it is. No, that was the image. And so now it's attached to the form, and you fill out the rest. I won't take the time to fill out the title, the medium, the size, the price. And this happens to be abstract. And then you click submit. So I know that was a rush job, but you'll be able to watch it as it speeds through by looking at the video again. So we have about 15 minutes left.
Yes, I do have one question right here from Beverly Schermeyer. She does mention that some art shows want to be able to put the artwork, the image of the artwork in a program. So, to be able to be print ready, I guess, is what we're talking
Right.
about here. So,
Well, they
back to
may
the DPI.
have, yeah, but however they're outputting it, it's still going to be the same number of pixels. So they probably specify it might even be a little bit higher resolution. Instead of 1920, they may say, send me a 2500 pixel width image that'll go into a nice glossy program. And instead of a 1 megabyte file, they might say, it needs to be a 5 megabyte file. So your quality setting might be up closer to 95 or maybe even 100, but it's going to make a big file, sometimes 5, 6, or even more megabytes. And they may have a different way of sending that large file than email, because email begins to have a problem when the files get over 5 megabytes. They may use something like I was talking about earlier, like Dropbox or some file transfer mechanism. But yeah, I understand there are art shows that want to print a program, and it may be a high quality glossy set of images, and they want a high resolution, high quality file, and they might specify a larger pixel size and a bigger file, meaning a higher quality setting. They might even ask for one of those different file types instead of a JPEG, but probably not.
Okay. This might be a good time for anybody to unmute themselves if they have another question for Bob out there. Or are there so many questions that we don't know how to narrow down what to ask? Because for some, this could be very overwhelming. For me, the cloud, that's one of my issues. And actually, I just had a reunion with some friends down in my hometown, a bunch of women on Saturday, and I have a lot of photos. I tried to do where I tried to email many photos, and of course it didn't work. So I have to now figure out, do I do Google Photos or Google Share? This stuff
Right,
I'm
right.
not good at, and it's time to learn this better. Or like you said, Dropbox. So yeah, it's a lot to know.
And it's a problem that has come as the cameras in the phones have gotten better. And the problem is the size, the file size of the picture that you take is much, much bigger than it used to be, because you got a higher resolution, a higher quality camera in the phone. And you'll notice, like on an iPhone, if I take a picture and then I pick that picture or a different one from my photos program in the phone, and then I want to email it, it'll ask me the question, do I want to send it the original size, which is big, or do I want to send it as a small, medium, or large file? And what I think has been happening when things are sent to the jurors or to art shows is people are picking maybe the small file, and so you get this very small, relatively low quality file, but it goes fast in email. And with your friends, you've got these large, you got a really good camera in the new phone, and it's taking a really big file. And if you clip 3 or 4 of those onto an email, it probably won't even go. And so you have to pick a lower quality file. That's why you may have to resize the files.
It's funny, Android never asks, what size do you want to send? Does anyone out there find that? I don't find it, because I have an Android phone. So is it only iPhones that do ask that question?
Well, I know when I pick a picture out of my photos, and that's the app that stores them locally, I pick the picture and then I want to do a share.
Mhm.
And if I want to share it, it automatically asks me, do I want to send large, medium, small, or original size? And
Yes, okay. So then for the people that do get that question, I'm not one of them. Maybe Android people are not one. You said once again, which size to choose then for art show
well,
submissions?
there's a difference. Yeah, for the art shows, we went through somewhat painful process of sizing the file to the specific requirements requested for the show, which was 1,920 pixels, and with a quality setting somewhere between, like I say, 80 and 90%. And the file comes out to be, in this case, almost 2 megabytes, 1.7 or something. That file, you're not going to send it from the camera app. What you're going to do is you're going to attach, like you're attaching to an email. In this case, you're attaching it to the form. You're attaching that file that you have already resized. You won't get the request to send a small, medium, or large. The only time you get that is if you're sending it directly from the Photos app, in this case from an iPhone, and you're trying to send it to to an email. It'll say it because it knows with these high quality cameras, it'll really choke up the email. And so it says, do you want to send that big, or do you want to send a small one? And if it's just an email to somebody to take a look at, and the medium or the small is fine.
It's a good side note clarification
Yeah,
for
or maybe
people.
confusion. Hopefully not.
Want to add to it? No, you've cleared up a lot of confusion here. That's why we asked you. And I think that we're far less confused than before. And I won't speak for people. Maybe people came in here not confused, but maybe a few came in confused. So hopefully I'm
Well,
less confused. Certainly. a couple of
hopefully
these apps I
looking
didn't know
through,
about.
yeah, I say hopefully looking through the slides and then looking through the video, because, you know, it's like learning a subject in school. You know, if all you do is listen to the lecture and you don't have practice problems and you don't review it, it can be confusing. So hopefully looking at this video again, and the demonstration that was done at the end will maybe answer some of the questions that I'm sure there are still a good number of them that are out there.
Bob, one question, when you saved it with your name, you know, the name, title, whatever, and you
Right.
save it right onto your iPhone, so it's saved on iCloud, but also on your iPhone photo library, does it show up underneath that with that new saved title? Normally I just see
Yes.
a photograph, but I've never been able to save it with that information unless I download it to my computer.
Yeah, and that's one of the limitations of the iPhone Photos app is I haven't found a way, if all I'm using is that app, not Snapseed, where you can also change names with Snapseed or with this resize. If I'm using the application in the iPhone that's called Photos, I don't see any way to change the name of it. If I pull it into my computer, I'm able to change the name, but on my phone, I can't. If you save it with the name that I had changed it back into your photos library, in this case, I saved it up on the cloud, but you could save it in both places. Yes, it will have that name changed. That name will be, you know, the file, that is the file name. It'll be, you know, last, first, so on .jpg. So that is the file name.
Okay, because I had to do it, take it, download, send it to my email, then email it down to my computer and then change the name in Microsoft and then save it there and then attach it from there. Like it's a
Yep.
two-step project.
Yeah, and that's the way I've done it a number of times, but with this app, the resize, and like I say, you can also do it. We didn't do it in Snapseed. When you go to save it or to export it, you have the ability to change the name of the file, and that is, like I say, that is the file name. So if you see it in a directory, you attach it to an email, it will have that name.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of more, a comment and a question, and then I think we'll wrap it up. So Marianne Dietz says, thank you very much, Bob. It was terrific. And we have, oh yeah, another comment that the Snapseed demo was very helpful from Deborah's iPad. And the last question here, can you get, here another DPI question, can you get 300 DPI JPEG images from a 10 megapixel digital SLR?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay, that was the question.
But again, yeah, but again, I think I'll get one of those links that describes where DPI dots per inch really play a part. You know, it seems like a dimension that would have a direct correlation to the size of the file. And it really is the number of dots per inch of the ink that goes on the paper, and they're different things. So
Seems to be, yeah, an area of concern, I think, or curiosity for quite a few. And I
Well,
also
it
have an
is-
SLR, and I don't know what, set it to raw, it can get over, it just can get to be a lot. And the DPI, including that, can, for me, it doesn't come easily. So I'm sticking to my phone for a while and just to deal with that. But yeah, you've really cleared things up. We appreciate your time. Would you like to tell us anything that maybe you have coming up, Bob? Anything we should know about?
Yeah, it's a pretty busy week here. If any of you are going to be in the Essex area this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be participating along with about, I think, 30 or 40 artists on the green. So
Nice.
from 10 o'clock till 5 on both Saturday and Sunday, praying for no rain, we will have an art show, and there'll be various art of different mediums, my photography. There's even some jewelry and pottery and things like that. It's sort of a fun event.
Sounds very
So I hope to
fun.
see some of you there.
Excellent. Yes. And everybody get up there and say hello to Bob. If I'm up there, I will find you as well. All right. So then we will, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. And Bob, thank you so much again for your time. So if people have lingering questions, maybe rewatch the video. It'll be on the website, the Madison Art Society CT.org website, and the slides will be up as well. And next week we will have a to be continued section from Bob. So I guess we'll see everybody next week. Just look for that reminder from the Art Society that will come out to you. All right.
Okay.
So everybody have a great evening. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Bob. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.